Presento. I'm one of the Deputy Directors at the National Cybersecurity Centre. Talk a little bit today about cyber pathways. I'll just share my screen. Hopefully this will work. So what I'm going to talk about today, I'm talk a little bit about GCHQ and the NCSC. Talk a little bit about what's going on out there and some of the pathways that you can take if you want to work in cybersecurity. So a little bit of history about GCHQ. So in 2019, we became 100 years old. We were formed just after the First World War. And as you can see, we've had a lot of locations. Our latest location is the Donut, quite an iconic site now, but started off back at Bletchley Park. The building under construction is where I first worked when I joined GCHQ back in, 1989. And the one at the bottom is our very latest location, which is where the NCSC is based, which is in London, just outside Victoria Station. And actually, if you want to know about the history, there's a new book. So that's my book review for the moment. Behind the Enigma, just talks a little bit about GCHQ's history. And I'm about halfway through it at the moment. So, National Cybersecurity Centre. So we were launched 4 years ago now, and we really got 4 objectives. The first thing is understand the environment. Who's out there? What are the threat actors? What are they capable of? What sort of thing do they bring to bear when they might attack an organisation? It's about reducing the risk. So how do we help organisations, given that there's these bunch of threat actors out there, how do we help organisations prepare for a potential attack or a compromise? Then it's about reducing the impact. So risks happen, and you'll read it in the newspapers and in the on the BBC or wherever, about systems, organisations being attacked from the internet or being attacked in cyberspace. And so when that happens, we are the lead organisation. We come in and help them recover and sort of move on from it. And finally, we build capacity and capability, because ultimately, we need the skills, we need the technologies to be secure. We need a load of things out there that will help the UK be a safe place to live and work online. And if you want to know more about what the National Cybersecurity Centre does, then every year we do a report, and last year was no exception. So you can go and read it on our website. It gives you a lot more detail about the sorts of things that we get up to and what we work on. So when I started, I started back in 1989, and I've always worked on the security side. So GCHQ's always had 2 missions, or sort of started with 2 missions. One was security mission, and the other one was the intelligence mission. And both of them work together, because ultimately, if you're doing security, you really need to understand your threat actors. And I talked about NCSC's, understanding the threat environment, and that intelligence side of the mission that GCHQ has very much helps that. I've always worked on the security side, and then when I joined, we used to talk about communication security. How do we protect government communications between A and B? And largely that was all around the world. You think about embassies around the world, think about troop deployment. It was all about how do we protect the communications between them. But I joined a really interesting time, because computers were being used more and more in government and by organisations, and we started to think about computer security. And how do we keep those computers safe and secure? And quite a few things. If you go back to 1980, if you go back to just before I joined, there were a couple of interesting incidents. There was the first worm on what was then the internet, and also there was sort of a hacking story called The Cuckoo's Egg, written by a guy called Cliff Stoll, and he talked about how he had tracked attackers through what was then the internet. So I joined at a really interesting time. Computer security was started, but we soon thought, actually, it's not the computers we were that interested in so much, but it was the information that they held. And that's where we started to use the word information security. So we went from communication security, computer security, and then we started talking about information security. And then we changed it again, because the world is constantly evolving, and we started to use the term information assurance. And information assurance is slightly different, because what it emphasises is having confidence that your security is working. It's all very good having security measures in place, but how do you know they're working? And so information assurance was intended to emphasize the fact that, you know, if you've got some security, does it actually work? If you've got a lock on your door, is it any good? And that's where information assurance came from. And finally, we've now morphed, if you like, into cybersecurity. So that's, if you like, a little bit of a history. And, you know, we started off, you know, with ComSec, then we had CompuSec, then we had InfoSec. And then we had InfoArse, which was didn't have quite the same ring to it. And now we've got CySec or cybersecurity, however you want to call it. And that's where we are today. And that's what the NCSE is about. It's all about cybersecurity. So when I talk about cybersecurity, what do I actually mean? So if you want to read the National Cybersecurity Strategy in 2016, it's a great read. But that defines cybersecurity to be that. Refers to the protection of information systems, hardware, software, and associated infrastructure, the data on them, and the services they provide from unauthorized access, harm, or misuse. Quite long, you know, quite a lot of words there. I like to simplify it. Ultimately, this is all about how do we protect ourselves in cyberspace? How do we keep ourselves safe in cyberspace? Or how do we, another way of thinking about it is how do we reduce the risk and harm in cyberspace? And that's really the role of the NCSE. So, okay, so how do you set about for getting a career in cybersecurity? I'm not actually going to start there. I'm actually going to start with medicine, and it'll all become clear, hopefully. So in 1841, I think, in the national census, I think about a third of doctors were unqualified or you know didn't have the right qualifications. So in 1858, they brought in the Medical Act. And the General Medical Council was formed. So that was, what, 160 years ago, 170 years ago, that the medical profession started to kind of be formalized and regularized, and to what we see today. And I keep using medicine and the medical profession as a bit of an analogy for cybersecurity, because we're quite new. It's quite hard to get across to people some of the things we talk about, some of the concepts, and that's why I try to use medicine. So if you look at the medical profession, it's quite well structured. So if you go on the National Health, if you wanted to work in the health sector, you could go on the NHS website and it lists all the types of jobs that you could do if you were in the health sector. And it's not just about medical practitioners, but it's all the support people, all the people that you need to make the health sector work. And then you can drill down, you could take a doctor, and then you could look at all the different types of specialists that you can be under that doctor. And that's a really great place to start if you want to get a job in the health sector. And then if you look at the doctors and you look at how they are supported and what is the structure around their development, and what you'll find is there are all of these. There are lots of colleges and professional bodies that represent each of the different specialisms that sit within health. And they are there to define sort of how the pathways into it, the sort of qualifications that you need. They are there to bring forward that next generation of health professionals. And there you go. There's a great example. That's I think it's pediatrics. So they have mapped out how you develop into a career in pediatrics, and you get a similar sort of pathway for other specialisms in the health sector. So that's the health sector. So where are we from a cybersecurity perspective? It's a lot more confusing. I mean, I'd love to be able to point you at a website and say, go look there, like the NHS, it's got all the things listed there, and it'll help you navigate. And if you want to be a specialist, there's these professional bodies that you can go to. It's not quite the same in cybersecurity. At the moment, I mean, this is just a random kind of selection, but here's a bunch of bodies who are involved in some shape or form in cybersecurity. And we talked about specialisms in the medical profession. We don't really have the same in cybersecurity yet, or that's the position I'd love to get to. What we have is something called cybersecurity and a load of organisations involved in it. And there is work going on to try and pull this together, to bring some sort of cohesion and coherence around it. There's some work going on to build what we're calling the UK Cybersecurity Council. Think engineering councils, think sort of medical council, where you have a bunch of bodies sitting underneath it who have various responsibilities for different elements of the profession. And if anybody's interested, you can go and look at the formation project that's been run by the IET. And hopefully, we've recently launched. It's recently launched, I think last week, and one of the, this is kind of the future, but we're not there yet. So what I was going to talk about next is what do I see from working in this space and being a head of profession at GCHQ. What do I see as how you navigate your way through what can be quite a complex space. Okay, so if I take the sort of the NHS model, so from an NCSC perspective, if I look around National Cybersecurity Centre, I will see people doing all these types of roles in the same way that if you look around the NHS, you see all those roles I showed you earlier. And they're all working effectively in cybersecurity. They're all contributing to what we do as our mission as the National Cybersecurity Centre. So let's drill down a little bit, and I'm just going to pick up the one. So this is, if you like, it's sort of equivalent to what picking up doctors and looking at the different specialisms that the doctors have. So here I'm looking at cybersecurity specialists, and within the NCSC we have people who do all these things: threat assessment, risk management, security architecture, all the way down to things like security monitoring and vulnerability management. Those are, for me, the set of specialisms that, if you wanted a sort of a career as a cybersecurity specialist, noting that there's all those other things you could be doing in cybersecurity, those are the areas that I'm kind of going to focus on. And what I thought I'd do was I'd just take one of them for the moment, and I'd talk a little bit about, okay, so if you think to yourself, I want to be a security architect, security architect will look at a system and I'll kind of look at it from the mindset of an attacker, and kind of say, well, if I was going to attack this, I'd come in there and I'd go over there and I'd move around to there, and then I'd compromise this bit over there. Therefore, we need to build a system to prevent that from happening. So that's really how a security architect works. So what's the pathway of one? So what you're looking at is up to 4 years of studying a relevant degree, and then they join the organisation. Up to 3 years work experience in technology, so largely get a job within the organisation doing more technology. And when I say studying a relevant degree, it is largely, if you want to do a technical role, it's studying a technical degree. So computer science is the main one that people come into this from. Then up to 3 years work experience, you then go on a structured development programme, and that can be from 3 to 5 years. So you understand technology, and a lot of it is, how does technology work? Because cybersecurity is largely about preventing bad things being done to technology. So if you know how it works and how it fails, you can then improve it. So you're on 3 to 5 years structured development program, and then when you leave it, it's really 2 or 3 years of independent operation. So depending where you start from, depending on your own personal attributes, a whole bunch of things, that journey can be quicker or longer depending on sort of who you are. But it is it's quite a long journey, and it's not that dissimilar to a specialist in the medical profession. And if you look how long it takes, if you looked at I showed you that diagram of the pediatrics, that is a very similar sort of time frame. And of course, you don't have to have had a relevant degree. At the end of the day, you can come at this if you've got a technical background, working as a system administrator, you've just been working with technology, then that can be the equivalent of a degree. It doesn't have to, you don't have to come through that sort of formal education system. But that's what I've represented here is really the most standard approach, if you like, the security architects who work in NCSC have gone through. So that's why I kind of show you that. And not all those specialisms maybe take the same length of time, but we are looking at people who need to go operate independently, sometimes on quite significant systems when we're talking about security architects. So it does take a while. So let's explore a little bit this the relevant degrees and what can you do in the higher education space or even the further education space. So there are some national standards out there that include the word cyber in them. So we've got there's standards above, from level 4 up to level 7. And not all of them, not easy to find necessarily when it comes to the apprenticeship side of things and further education. We run our own apprenticeship under CyberFirst. I'll talk a little bit about that at the end. But I thought it might be worth sharing the sorts of things that you get taught or you get to learn if you do the CyberFirst apprenticeship. And so it's a 3-year. Each of these modules are roughly 4 weeks long, and if you immediately look, there is a lot of technologies in there. You might have expected to see it's all about security, but actually it's about technology and how technology works. So it's 64 weeks of we call it structured learning. So it's largely classroom or lab based, and you're basically learning all the knowledge you need to know to become a cyber specialist in any of those specialisms to a certain extent. It's a really good foundation level sort of qualification. And in between the structured learning, you're also provided with placements in different parts of the business, so that you're applying what you're learning, because a lot of this is about consolidation and application. It's all very well doing 4 weeks of computer systems or whatever, unless you can consolidate that. So you learn a lot by doing it, but it's all about consolidation. It's all about application. It's how does it work in the field, how does it work on a day-to-day basis, and getting your hands dirty. So that's our level 6 apprenticeship, degree level apprenticeship, and we're just finishing. This year is our first cohort will graduate, because the standard itself has only been around 2 or 3 years, so we've only just finishing off our first cohort. So that's our NCSE level 6 apprenticeship. What else is out there? Well, I talked a little bit about the the ones in yellow are the kind of owned by the Department for Education. The ones in green we have produced. So we started a program of degree certifications. We've been doing it now for about 8 or 9 years, and we ourselves have produced a number of standards. So this is what we think is a good thing to be taught in a cybersecurity degree, either at master's level or undergraduate level. Each one of those standards is different, so it's not just a case of, oh, this is a course that NCSE has looked at. You need to look at, this is a course that NCSE has looked at against this standard, and then that'll tell you the sorts of things that the course actually covers. And to date, I think that's 23 universities there that we have that offer one or more courses, because some offer a number of courses that we have recognised in cybersecurity, and they can all be found on the NCSE website. So if you're at that stage in your career or you're learning where you're thinking about going to university and you want to study a degree in cybersecurity, these are a bunch of universities that offer courses that we've looked at, and there are a lot of courses out there, and sometimes it's quite hard to navigate. So we've tried to use our expertise, our brand effectively, by kind of certifying them to help people navigate through and find a course that works for them. And I think my recommendation would always be to either do a degree, an undergrad degree in technology, then a master's degree in sort of security on top of that, or look for an integrated degree that covers technology and security all together. It's having that, all I'm trying to emphasize is having that mix of good technology understanding and with the security on top of it. If you're going into some of the specialist roles, like I say, there are so many jobs in cybersecurity, and many of them do not need that technical background. I'm just really focusing on those specialist jobs. Okay, I mentioned CyberFirst earlier. CyberFirst has now been going for about 5 years. And it's a program to try and identify and nurture the next generation of talent. It started as a bursary scheme, and the whole idea of that was, can we identify students as they leave school, give them some funding to help them through university, and whilst they're in university, give them additional opportunities. So we don't look necessarily for people who've done technical subjects at A level. We're certainly looking for people who are doing technical subjects at university, because we're trying to, broaden as much as we can the sort of interest, the sort of people who can go into cybersecurity. So when you're on the bursary program, if you're successful, one of the things we offer in the first year will be a summer academy, for example. So if you're not doing a technical degree, but you've got a passion for technology, and it is a passion for technology, that's the key thing that we're looking for in people who apply for into CyberFirst. If you've got that passion, then you can spend your first summer effectively learning more about technology. So you're in a much better place when we find work placements. And so far, I think we're over 900 students are either on the bursary program who have gone through the bursary program, and every summer we are looking for 250 to 300 placements every year, so that students get real experience working with companies. And it's been great. It's a really great partnership program where we couldn't have done this alone. We have got over sort of 130 partners, 140 partners involved now, many of them from industry, who help support students. So that's how it started. It started as a bursary program. But what we were finding was we weren't really getting the numbers applying, and certainly not the diversity in the people applying. So we decided that we needed to do more in the talent pipeline, and so started running summer courses and doing a whole load of things for other age groups. And that starts now all the way back at age 12, where we run Trailblazers and Venturers. We've got the girls' competition to try and improve diversity. But all of those activities are all about, encouraging people to think about a career in technology, think about a career in cybersecurity. And here's a bunch of activities that they can do, or you can do, to help you get into a position where you can get into something like CyberFirst. Because once you're in CyberFirst, we will look after you. We will nurture you through, all the way through into a job. And I think at the moment we're running something like 95 to 98% success rate in terms of people coming through CyberFirst program and then finding a job at the end of it. So if you get onto it, it's great. So I'll say a little bit more about both the bursary and our apprenticeship. So those are the details of the bursary scheme. It'll open up around about in the autumn, so around September, October time for applicants. You can get more on our website, on the GCHQ website. The link's at the bottom. So that's our CyberFirst bursary program. And then we got our CyberFirst degree apprenticeship program. Again, that's for people, that's the degree level. I've talked a little bit about it, but when you're applying for you can apply for either a bursary or an apprenticeship. And if you're applying for the apprenticeship is at GCHQ. There are other apprenticeships out there, but because this is part of CyberFirst, it's kind of good to give you a picture of the sorts of things that we do. So that's CyberFirst, and that's, if you like, quite a shortcut into a career in cybersecurity. But if you're in a position now where you've already left college, you're thinking of a change in career, how do you get a job in cybersecurity? And it is quite tricky because, as I said, if you're joining, you wanted to join the medical professional, the medical sector or the health sector, it's quite good. It's quite mature. It's been around, 160, 170 years, and it's quite mature in terms of how it helps people find a pathway through. We are not that mature, and so it can be quite hard. There's no one place you can go, that's got all the jobs in cybersecurity. So a few tips, I suppose. So we work quite closely with a whole load of organizations that offer services and products, cybersecurity services and products. And if you go on our website, you can find a list of all those companies. And they will be recruiting, they will be looking for new talent all the time. So that's there's a place, that is a place you could go. It's a bit of a resource. It wasn't set up to be that kind of resource, but it's certainly where you can find the companies that we work with and we engage with. But ultimately, you've got the cybersecurity companies who specialize, if you like, on cybersecurity, but then you've got any other organization and any large organization, whether it be retail, whether it be banking, whether it be critical infrastructure, whatever, will have a cybersecurity team of some size. You know, if you're a small organisation, it'll be small. Larger organisation, bigger. So, you know, whether you're a telecoms company, there are places, you know, they will have teams. If you're interested in a career in cybersecurity, that's the kind of place you could be looking for to see what sort of jobs they've got available to them. In terms of further, if you're not doing further education or higher education, what would you do to learn? Well, there's quite a lot of free resources out there, particularly in terms of just starting out to try and understand what cybersecurity is all about. And something I always point people to is the MOOC, the massive online course that's done by the Open University. I think it runs for about 8 weeks. That's quite a good place to start, because there's a lot of stuff out there. But, you know, I'd be the first to admit that it's not the easiest profession to get into at the moment. And, you know, I look to the Cybersecurity Council, the formation of the Cybersecurity Council, to start to formalise and help us to create something that makes it a lot easier for people to navigate through. So hopefully what I've given you today is a bit of a taste for, you know, how to get into cybersecurity. I hope it's been useful, and thank you for listening. I'll now finish. Thank you.